Welcome back to Conversations Beyond Table 5. I'm very excited about my guest today. I think that she has a lot to offer us, even though she may not believe that at the time, but trust me, she does. Her name is Holly Atkins. She is a female attorney here in Columbia. Hi, Holly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, I think.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Trust me, you'll be great. All right, so Holly, you grew up in Hartsville.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in Hartsville.
Hartsville is a nice little town, but my father was very successful. He was not only a lawyer, but he was the state senator. And so being the daughter, it's kind of like being the daughter of the preacher. You know, you're the daughter of the state senator. So there was a lot of pressure. And I sometimes rebelled against that pressure. But at the same time, it was a great life. Went to Hartsville High School, graduated from Hartsville High School, came to Carolina at the young age of 17, enjoyed college, and then went to law school. But there's nothing like growing up in a small town. I still have the same friends, some of the same friends. We have been friends for 45 years, and it's so neat. People have been through divorces and babies and deaths and children, and yet we're all there for each other when anything happens. So it was an interesting life growing up in Hartsville.
So tell me about your parents. How did they end up in Hartsville? Your dad's story is definitely...
My dad's story is so interesting. So his father came over from Lebanon through Ellis Island with some aunts and uncles. He was 14, came by himself except for the aunts and uncles. They traveled from New York south, stopping in Hartsville and Darlington and Florence. Really, the PD seemed to be the place for them.
The hot spots.
The hot spots. And they were merchants, obviously, so they're going to open businesses, they're going to sell things, they're going to do what they can do to make a living. He ended up in Hartsville.
Tell us your dad's name.
My dad's name is Ed Saleeby.
Okay.
And his father's name was Eli.
Awesome.
And Eli was a Lebanese hippie. He died right before I was born, but the pictures of him, he has hair down past his shoulders. I mean, this is 1940. You know,
Wow.
this is a long time ago. Yeah. Hair down past his shoulders, you know, wearing a ponytail. He'd fit right in with the guys with buns now. And he came to Hartsville. He met my grandmother, who was Creole Stokes, and she was deaf. Had a big farm, came from a farming family. They got married, had 5 children. They had a daughter who died. And he opened up the Southern Candy Kitchen, which was in business he ran it from 1915 to when he died in 61.
So, and that's your grandfather?
That's my grandfather, Eli Saleeby.
Okay.
And so in the beginning, he made the candy, dipped the bananas in the chocolate, or did what he could. He sold cigarettes and beer, and he had pinball machines. So it was kind of a honky-tonky kind of place. And
which is a far cry from Lebanon.
It's a far cry from Lebanon. But it was not, you know, people didn't want their children necessarily going into the store where there was beer and cigarettes and that kind of thing in the time. So he got to Hartsville, he married, he had his children there, and he opened his store, and that was his story. Other than that, some of it's really foggy, but we do know we can prove they came through Ellis Island.
Dad did not want to be in the candy business.
He did not. Daddy was the 4th one, and he was like, I'm not working that hard. I don't want to work from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every night.
Yeah.
And so he got into Carolina, and as I told you earlier, his parents were not happy about it. They made him hitchhike. They had cars, but they made him hitchhike to Columbia because they weren't going to take him. And because they did not approve. They thought that was lazy. He was going to go to school, and you know, that wasn't appreciated. But Daddy got out of undergraduate school and law school in 5 years. Now you realize undergraduate school is a 4-year program.
Yeah, in law school.
but it was
My
different.
undergraduate school was not a 4-year program.
Well, back then, but the rules were different. You know, it just was easier if he went year round and passed everything he needed to pass, so you could get through things quickly. And he got accepted into law school, just pushed through that, and was out of college in 1949, and opened up his practice in Hartsville in 1949.
At what point did his parents go, okay, good job?
I want to say probably law school.
Okay, so before he got out.
Yeah, before he got out, and then he was coming home and he was going to work and make a living. And then what's so great is his youngest brother, my Uncle Ted, had been born with polio. And now Uncle Ted's college career sounds a little like yours. It was about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
But he went to undergraduate school and law school too. He followed Daddy's footsteps.
Wow.
And took him a little bit longer. He was a fun guy, liked to have a good time. Daddy was serious, driven. I mean, he was fun, but he was just very driven, so he just did it much faster. But my Uncle Ted was also a lawyer and followed after Daddy. And by that time, everybody was fine with it, so he didn't get the stern talking to for going to college.
Yeah, your dad paved that way. So, speaking of your dad, I know that there are a lot of Big Ed stories, and one of my favorites is the liquor bottle.
Oh, yes, which is behind you.
Okay.
So, he was in the Senate. Yep. And when he passed, I don't know that I saw this or realized the significance of it before he passed, but I got this book. It looks like a book. And it says, "What do you do in the event of a filibuster?" And you open it up, and it's a bottle of vodka and 2 little shot glasses.
That's
so
awesome.
it was his sense of humor. He did have a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And but he believed in hard work, but he believed in compromise, something we don't have a lot of today. He believed in, I can't get my way completely, but you can't have your way completely. There's got to be somewhere in the middle we can come. And I think his career, and people who know even more about it than I do, that lived through it, would say that his biggest strength was he could make the biggest enemies, or the people with the most divergent opinions, reach an agreement and shake hands.
That's such a gift. And what a gift it would be today. He would be very disappointed by how fractured we are. I'll tell a story because this seems to matter so much in this world. So, now I have to admit, I was raised, a yellow dog Democrat. I mean, he was a Democrat, even though he liked compromise and believed in compromise. And a young guy was running for Senate, and he won. And it was Glenn McConnell. And Daddy said something, and I happened to be in the room listening. He was like, "Now listen, let's get him set up. Let's help him out. Let's do this." Senator McConnell was going to join him on the Banking and Insurance Committee. And Daddy was all concerned about, let's make sure he knows what's going on. Let's help him. Let's do all these things. And I was like, "Daddy, why would you do that? I mean, this guy's not on your team. And he may not believe some of the same things you believe." And Daddy was just like, "Well, Holly, that's awful that you would say that. I mean, he's been elected to be in the Senate. He's going to be on the Banking and Insurance Committee. And we need to work together as a team. And I'm absolutely going to be kind to him." And I was young at the time. And that really impressed me. Yeah. Because I was all charging in the other direction. Yeah. And he said, "Absolutely not." How old was he when he passed away?
He was too young, 74.
Oh, wow.
It was 2002.
Okay.
So things had changed a little bit, but not where we are now.
No.
He would tell you that the members of the Senate, regardless of the party, were his dear friends. And they disagreed, but they still were friends.
Yeah, I can remember working at places in town or or knowing, people from opposite sides and what good friends they were. And I can remember that always being shocking to me and going, oh, I wonder how they get along so well. Or, the fact that they did get along so well surprised me.
And because it wasn't personal.
Yeah.
It was all about state business. What's best for the state of South Carolina? Mm-hmm. And their constituents. And sure, they disagreed on stuff. But if some of those people were here today, I think we could compromise on some of the issues that are tearing us apart right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me about your mom.
My mother, well, first let me say this, she's still with us. She was so smart and so cute, and she went to Coker College. Both my parents are first generation college. My mother was the first to go to college in her family, and my father was the first to go to college in his family. My mother's parents, her mother maybe had a 3rd or 4th grade education, and my grandfather, my mother's father, had maybe a 6th or 7th grade education, but he was a mechanic. Very smart guy, knew how to do it, had a job. But they saved every penny. They had 2 daughters for them to go to college. So off Mama goes to Coker College, and she's doing really well. They were not allowed, the Coker College girls were not allowed to go to the Saleeby Candy Kitchen because of the cigarettes and the beer. So she didn't meet him there. They were required to double date. Somebody asked Mama to go on a double date. She was like, okay. That woman was dating my father, and Mama was to date the other boy. And they met on that date, and then they started dating.
Really?
Isn't that neat?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And so my mother is partly, I always say that I'm my father's daughter, but my mother had more influence on me than sometimes I realized. She's very independent. She taught school for a couple years after they got married, but then once she had children, she really worked from home. She was on the Coker board. She was on the board of Calmia Gardens, which was a garden in Hartsville that she wanted to keep going. She was on the board at church. She always did council on aging. That's to help the old people. She was a member of the Darlington County Council on Aging. The PD Area Girl Scouts. Her favorite thing was Meals on Wheels. She got Meals on Wheels started in Darlington County.
Really?
Yes, but she said, we've got to feed these people that can't feed themselves and they can't get out of the house. And she taught adults. So I'd be home from school and there'd be this adult man in the room. And Mama would be teaching him how to read and write because nobody had ever taught him how to read and write. So she started that program. She's something.
Yeah.
She's a character.
Yeah.
And she was very strong-willed, and my father wouldn't have been who he was without her. They were a good team.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Both of them. And you got 2 great worlds there.
I do.
Going for you. Now, so what's your favorite Big Ed story?
Oh gosh. About him, or there's
well, that something he did, it can be funny, or something he said, or something he made happen, or
well, one thing I'm proud of is that he wrote the legislation or co-authored the legislation that created the vocational rehabilitation department because his brother had polio, and so he was very concerned about people with disabilities. Somebody, because they were in Hartsville, said, do you know Holly? My friend said, yeah, she's one of my best friends. And this young lady said to my friend, I'm going to tell you a story about her dad. She'd gotten married, a few years had passed, I don't know how many, and she got brain cancer or a brain tumor. And if you read about him, he had an open door policy. Anybody could come anytime. And she said, Mr. Saleeby, I've got this cancer. I don't know what to do. Is there anything you can do to help me? I don't know if she thought she got it from somewhere and there was a case involved. She told my friend, she said, Christmas came. And I opened up the door. There was a bag of Christmas gifts for each one of my children. Taken care of. The whole Christmas was taken care of. Food, everything. He had passed away before I ever knew he did that for an old friend of mine.
Isn't that wild?
And that's what I'll never be, I'm probably half the lawyer my daddy was, but that is part of my purpose, is just helping people.
Your dad, he passed away in 2002, so he knew that you were an attorney. He saw that and everything, right? Yeah.
He did. So, but I never did the one thing he wanted me to do before he died.
What was that?
Represent injured workers. I did it, and there's the rebellion. So I was never going to go to law school.
Right.
I mean, my brother was a lawyer. My daddy was a lawyer. I didn't care for, I just didn't care for that. And so I was going to be a social worker. That's what I went to Carolina for. My goal in life, because I did realize by that time, I've been very blessed. And there are a lot of people who are not as blessed. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can be a social worker. And so went to college, graduating, and I'm going to get a job. Teachers, social workers, the people that do the hard work get paid nothing. Talking under $10,000 a year. We're just a long time ago. And so I secretly applied to law school because I had told my parents to their face, I am never going to law school. So I couldn't admit this. No. So I secretly applied to law school and got in. So I had to tell them. At that point, I had to say, because I'm living on my own. I've been living on my own. And I said, I'm going to go to law school. So I'm going to need some help because I'm not going to be able to work full-time anymore. And they're like, okay, you're going to law school? I said, yeah. And so I went to law school, and what I really am now is a social worker with a law degree. Because all I ever wanted to do was help people, but I didn't start off that way because here I had gone and done the one thing I swore I wasn't going to do. Everybody expected me to go home like my brother and practice law with my daddy. And so life was just going to be a piece of cake for me, a silver spoon in my mouth. Everything was just going to be great. So the first job I took was with an insurance defense firm with a Republican leaning. And I did it on purpose. One of the dumbest things I ever did, but did it on purpose to say, I'm not you. I'm going to go plow my own course.
Right.
And I was suing people that couldn't pay their hospital bills. And I'm telling you, you talk about depressed. I'd go home at night going, this sucks. I mean, I just talked to this lady who can't eat, doesn't have food on the table, and I'm telling her I'm suing her because she can't pay her hospital bill. So I realized I couldn't do that for very long. And so my next job, I went to the state accident fund. Took a pay cut. My father is furious. He's like, you don't take pay cuts.
Was he furious that you were doing that for that company?
No,
what do you think of that?
No, I mean, he was disappointed that I was doing insurance defense. We'll just be honest. But he was embarrassed that I was taking a pay cut. Probably more embarrassed than anything else.
Yeah.
Because your life, you're supposed to always earn more money. And I said, well, no, Daddy, I want to go do this, and I'm going to take a pay cut. So off I went to the state accident fund, representing state employers, USC, DSS, DMH. So I was still not for the people, but I could be fair in that job. It was state, state employees, teachers, those types of things. Well, not teachers, but state employees. And I did that for a couple years, got great experience, trial experience. And so I left there and opened up my own firm. Still did insurance defense. I said, I'm going to do it on my own. And this was in 1993, and it was April Fool's Day. And I said, if it doesn't work out, I can just say it was a joke. I did it. And so I actually did very good. I mean, I think that the reason I've been successful is because I worked harder than anybody else. And if you put in the work, it comes back. So I'm on my own, and you have to understand, a sole practitioner in 1993 wasn't supposed to do insurance defense. You were supposed to be with a big insurance firm. This was kind of new. I was saying I was a boutique law firm and all this kind of stuff. And I got clients, and they gave me a chance, and I could do a good job, and they would be like, okay, she's doing a good, and so they got more business and more. Surely a couple people probably gave me a chance because they knew who I was, and maybe they thought, okay, we'll give Ed's daughter a chance. But the only way I kept the work and grew was the work that I did. In 1998, somebody came to me and said, we want you to come work for us. I was like, no, thank you. Well, his firm wanted one of my clients. And the client said, we're loyal to her. We're not going to give you this business unless you hire her. And I was like, and I appreciated that, but I was like, I don't want to come work for you. But in the end, they made an offer that was just, finally my father's proud because I'm taking a pay increase. I was making enough money on my own, but this was huge. I wasn't going to have to run the business. I wasn't going to have to pay the bills.
Right.
I was just going to get to practice law and make a good load of money. And then in 1999, Jim Hodges gets elected. That was the happiest my father has ever been. A funny Ed story is when Jim Hodges got elected, there was the party that night, and Daddy was older by this time, and he had no intention of coming, but he got so excited. He had somebody drive him over to congratulate Jim Hodges, and he got up on the stage, and all of a sudden I realized my daddy had on his house sweater, that you wear around the house just when you're comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's raggedy and just wretched. And I'm looking at him going, why didn't I see him before he got up there and he took off his house sweater? That was hilarious, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
But he was so excited. So I had always wanted to be a work comp commissioner.
Commissioner.
So
what
there's
is that?
7 commissioners, and they're appointed by the governor. And they're the judges for workers' comp. They're not real judges, but they're commissioners. So if you have a dispute, you go before a commissioner, and that commissioner acts as an administrative judge and makes a ruling. And it was a great experience. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's very political. That was the first real political job that I had.
Did you know that it was so political?
Yes, I should have. I'm in my 30s, though, so I'm much smarter now than I was when I was in my 30s. At least common sense wise, anyway. Right. This is a funny story. So we're at the State House. Governor Hodges is about to swear me in. I've got my closest friends and family with me. And Daddy's standing there, and he looks at me and he says, now listen, you don't have to do this. We can just tell him that you have made a mistake. Because now you talk about a pay cut. I was taking, this wasn't a little couple $1,000 pay cut.
Yeah.
I was going from a large defense firm to state employment.
Right.
As a commissioner.
As a commissioner, yeah.
Daddy was furious once again, or embarrassed. I don't know. People tell me he was real proud of me, but at the time, my sense was my father was disappointed in me.
Do you think that's true, though?
I don't know. People tell me it's not, but that's just how I felt at the time. I think my father wanted me to be successful, and I think in his mind, being successful partly was making a good living. Because that's where he's from.
Yeah.
And his father was successful selling candy. The Candy Kitchen was $1 million business.
Yeah.
This wasn't chump change.
Right.
So I look at him and go, no, Daddy, this is what I really want to do. And he's like, okay. And he died so young. If he had lived longer, we could have had these discussions where I could have said, how did you feel really about that? Or, but he died before I left the commission. So I went on the commission in 1999, and Daddy died in 2002. And I had 2 more years to serve, and then I opened up a firm where I was only going to represent injured workers. And I will tell you, I did think about that. The only thing the man ever wanted me to do was help people, which is all I ever really wanted to do.
Right.
But because I was so rebellious and so determined to be different and so determined to plow my own path, I never let myself do the one thing that I really wanted to do. So when he died, I said, I'm done. And I went and hung a shingle and said, I'm only going to help people who get hurt on the job.
Wow. And of course you had to get there by yourself.
Well,
it took all of that to get there, and because if you had done it because Big Ed said, who knows what kind of firm this would be now, or
that's true.
What you would do. So
that's a good way to put it. I did have to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And that's just who I am. And it was a crooked path.
Yeah.
But that is my story, and that is how I got to help injured workers, and I have never been as happy at my job as I have been happy helping people.
What is your purpose?
My purpose is to help people get out of a bad situation, and I may not can make it a great situation, but help them keep food on the table, help their kids stay in school with clothes on their back, and help them have some pride. Because especially for men, when they get injured on the job, it is such, they lose so much pride. Their pride is from their job. Their pride is from supporting their family. And when they lose that, it can be embarrassing, devastating, crippling. And so my purpose is to do my social work, but with a law degree.
What is a case that you feel like you've made the biggest impact in what you want to do?
I have a really hard time with that because it's a little braggadocious to say what kind of great thing I've done for somebody, and I have a hard time with that. But I will tell you, the first case, so when I left the commission, I hung my shingle and I had nothing to do. And I would call friends up and say, hey, you got anything I can help you with? And I had one dear friend who's also gone now, Al Danley. And he said, here, Holly, here's a lady I don't have time to help. You help her. And I did a good job for her. She'd hurt her back and she'd lost her job, and times were tough. And I got a nice settlement for her so that she could survive for the rest of her life. But the greatest thing about that, she was the only client I had for a month or so. And so I talked to her every day. So she thought, man, am I getting some good service?
Right, yeah.
She didn't realize I didn't have anybody else to talk to. And that was, I don't know, 20 years ago, 2003. And we're still friends.
Oh, really?
And we still call each other. She still sends me birthday cards. I still send her birthday cards.
That's awesome.
She's born the same day as my mother. So we,
really,
we have that connection. And so what I would tell you is the greatest joy I have gotten from this job is the relationships I've built. I've done a good job for a number of people, but even better than doing a good job is making relationships. And those people know they can call me no matter what. And they can call my younger lawyers if they need anything too. But
thank God for that social working rebellious social worker degree you got. It's funny how we get to this stage and go, it was all for a reason. Like all of that was for a reason, and you found your own way to be of such service to so many people. It's great.
I couldn't have had this conversation with you even maybe 10 or 12, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I've really had to think about it and appreciate all the opportunities I've had.
Yeah.
I am greatly blessed.
Yeah. That's great. If you had 5 minutes with Big Ed to talk about, and of course I know you talk about everything, but let's say you had 5 minutes on different topics. You had 5 minutes to talk about the industry. Now, first of all, hey, I'm representing injured workers. And what would you tell him about the industry that you think he would find the most surprising today?
I had 5 minutes. First, I'd tell him I love him.
Yes.
Second, I would say, Daddy, I have this practice, and all I do is help people who got hurt. Because I know that would make him proud. And then I would say, but Daddy, we don't type letters with carbon paper on typewriters. We don't mail the letters in the mail. And we don't wait for them to write us back. We shoot an email over the internet and expect an immediate response.
A key word I'm hearing all throughout this is, and I think it's so important, is relationships, and just how important that factor is through all of your careers and the types of law you practiced, and just in what what Big Ed cherished the most.
He did. He cherished his relationships, and I learned that from him.
Yeah.
And he cared about all those people in the same way. That is what I think he gave me. He was just kind of the same guy.
Yeah.
He was the same guy wherever he was. He didn't change, because I did get to see him a good bit. He didn't change personalities. or the way he acted, or the way he treated people. And he treated the person who waited the table the same way he treated the owner of the business. And I always, and my mother too, but I always observe that.
Yeah.
That
That's key.
You make sure you understand that everybody's the same.
Yeah.
And you treat people. And that's how I've had such good relationships with my clients. They come from all around in all different places, but they're all the same to me.
We're all the same. Yeah. That's excellent. Excellent. You've got a great firm here. It's got a great story. What are your plans for this firm?
And so this firm will carry on. Dewana will carry it on. And Joe Weidman is here, and Joe and Dewana are like family to each other. And I hope that Joe will carry on with Dewana. I think when I retire, if they want to hire one other person, they can. I've told them nobody's getting hired while I'm still here. Got enough young people around right now. But I'm going to work some more. I'm 60 this year, and I still love what I do. I need to spend more time with Buddy, and I need to make sure I take my vacations like I need to. But I can't walk away yet.
No.
And I am just trying to set them up to be successful. And she has my values. And she believes that our goal is to help people. And if the clients that have had Dewana specifically help them have told me she is as loving and kind, and they consider her family. So I think the Atkins Law Firm will continue. I wouldn't have had the success I've had if it hadn't been for observing my parents' work ethic, and also observing how they took care of the people in Hartsville. So when Daddy passed away, of course the funeral with lots of people, and John Land spoke at the funeral, Senator Land. And one of the things that Senator Land said at Daddy's funeral was, I came to Hartsville, meet everybody, because Ed's gone, and everybody keeps telling me, hey, John, Ed's my best friend. And the next person in line would say, hey, Senator Land, Ed's my best friend. And Senator Land said, I thought he was my best friend. And he said that was who Big Ed was. Every single person said to him, hey, I'm Ed's best friend. And that's really who he was, John. I mean, he really was. I mean, everybody has their faults. I'm not trying to make him an angel, but he was a good guy, and he really loved people.
That's awesome. Well, it shows in you. It really does.
I hope so.
Well, thank you, Holly. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to rate, review, share, all that fun podcast stuff. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Holly.